The entire restaurant fell into a heavy silence. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop hit the carpeted floor of the velvet room. Preston Blackwood, a man worth $3 billion and feared by every server in the city, had just hurled a glass of vintage wine at the feet of the new girl. He expected tears. He expected an apology. He expected her to run. But Maya didn't flinch. She didn't look down at the shattered glass. Instead, she lifted her gaze and looked straight into his eyes, and said the one thing no one had ever dared to whisper to his face. What happened next didn't just ruin his dinner. It unraveled his entire life. This is the story of how arrogance finally met its match. The heavy oak doors of the Velvet Room, the most exclusive dining establishment in downtown Chicago, swung open with a quiet hush that screamed wealth. It was 7:15 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday, a night that usually meant a slow, manageable service. But tonight, the kitchen buzzed with panic, frantic and bordering on hysterical. "He's here," whispered Sarah, a veteran waitress with 5 years of experience and nerves of steel, though right now her hands trembled as she polished a wine glass. "I saw the Bentley pull up. It's Blackwood." David, the floor manager, looked like he might be sick. He tugged at his tie as the color drained from his face. "Are you sure?" "He didn't have a reservation." "Preston Blackwood doesn't make reservations," Sarah hissed, setting the glass down before she dropped it. "He makes demands. I can't take him. Last time," he said, "my voice ruined his digestion and tried to get me fired because the ice in his scotch wasn't perfectly square. I have a mortgage, David. I can't lose this job." The panic spread quickly. In the high-stakes world of fine dining, guests were treated like royalty. But Preston Blackwood wasn't royalty, he was a tyrant. The CEO of Blackwood and Associates, a ruthlessly aggressive hedge fund. He treated service staff not like human beings, but like malfunctioning appliances. He was infamous for tipping zero on $5,000 bills, simply because a waiter poured water from the left instead of the right. David scanned the room, desperation in his eyes. "Thomas, you handled the senator last week." Thomas, a burly man who had once worked as a bouncer, shook his head hard. "No way, that man's a psychopath. He made me refold his napkin 4 times. I'm not doing it. I'll do it." The calm voice cut through the chaos like a cool breeze. Everyone turned. Standing near the espresso machine was Maya. It was her first week. She was 26, with sharp features and observant, intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb everything at once. Her uniform was pressed with military precision, and unlike everyone else, she showed no sign of fear. "Maya, you've been here 3 days, David said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You don't understand. This isn't just a difficult customer. This is Preston Blackwood. He destroys people for sport. If you mess up, he won't just complain, he'll call the owner. He'll leave a review that tanks our rating. He's cruel." Maya calmly adjusted her apron. "Table 4 is the best spot for him. Secluded enough for his ego, but visible enough to make him feel important. I'll take him." "He's going to eat you alive," Sarah warned quietly. "He smells fear." "Then it's a good thing I'm not afraid," Maya replied. There was a weight in her voice that didn't match her resume, simple document, listing a few cafes and a gap year in Europe. She picked up a menu, her movements smooth and controlled. "Is he alone?" "He always is," David sighed, already bracing for disaster. "Just try not to speak unless spoken to. And for God's sake, don't make eye contact." Maya didn't promise anything. She pushed through the swinging doors and stepped onto the floor. Preston Blackwood was already seated at table 4, having bypassed the hostess stand entirely. He was in his late 50s, dressed in a bespoke suit that cost more than David's car. He typed furiously on his phone, his brow permanently creased with irritation. He radiated a toxic energy that made Nearby diners subtly lean away. Maya approached the table. She didn't rush. She didn't cower. She stopped at the precise, respectful distance. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood," she said. Her tone was neutral, professional, free of the desperate fawning he was used to. Preston didn't look up. He didn't acknowledge her at all. He kept typing, letting the silence stretch for an uncomfortable 30 seconds. It was a power move. A test he used on everyone. Most waiters would have cleared their throat or shifted nervously. Maya didn't move. She stood perfectly still, waiting, watching his thumbs fly across the screen. She noticed the faint tremor in his left hand, stress perhaps, or too much caffeine, and she waited. She noticed the way his jaw tightened. Finally, Preston slammed his phone face down onto the tablecloth. He looked up, his eyes cold and predatory. "I didn't order water," he snapped, glaring at the empty glass. "Why isn't there sparkling water here already? Do I have to teach you how to do your job, or are you just naturally incompetent?" Most new servers would have stammered an apology and rushed off to grab a bottle. Maya didn't. She met his gaze without blinking. "I haven't poured the water yet, Mr. Blackwood, because the San Pellegrino we stock is currently chilled to 40 degrees. Based on the humidity in the room and your flushed complexion, I assumed you might prefer room temperature to avoid shocking your system. Alternatively, I could bring a mineral water with a lower sodium content, given the visible swelling in your knuckles." The sounds of the restaurant seemed to fade. Preston blinked. The insult died in his throat. Slowly, he looked down at his hands. There was, in fact, a slight swelling, something he'd been ignoring all day. "Excuse me?" he said quietly. His voice was low, controlled, and dangerous. "Would you like the chilled Pellegrino?" Maya asked calmly, her face a mask of polite indifference. "Or shall I bring the aqua panna?" Preston narrowed his eyes. He wasn't used to logic. He was used to submission. "Panna, no ice. And if you take more than 60 seconds, he said coldly, "don't bother coming back." "Understood," Maya replied. She turned and walked away, her back straight. In the kitchen, David was pacing. "Is he yelling? Did he fire you yet?" "He wants aqua panna," Maya said, grabbing the bottle. "He's testing the boundaries." "There are no boundaries with him," Sarah cried. "He's a monster." "He's a bully," Maya corrected, placing the bottle carefully on a silver tray. "And bullies only respect one thing." "What's that?" David asked. "Authority," Maya said quietly. "And he's about to learn he's not the only one who has it." She walked back out. The real game was just beginning. Preston Blackwood thought he was just getting dinner. He had no idea he was sitting down to a chess match he was destined to lose. When Maya returned to the table, Preston was on a call. He wasn't whispering, "Tell the board I don't care about the environmental report, Tobias. Just bury the numbers. If the merger with Sterling Global doesn't go through by Friday, heads are going to roll and yours will be first." He ended the call aggressively as Maya set the glass down. She poured the water with practiced elegance, not spilling a single drop. "Menu," Preston demanded, not saying thank you. Maya handed it to him. He didn't open it. He tossed it aside. "I don't want to read. I want the 82 Bordeaux. The Chateau Lauer." Maya paused. Velvet Room's wine cellar was one of the finest in Chicago. The Chateau Lauer 1982 was legendary, priced at nearly $4,500 a bottle. "An excellent choice," Maya said evenly. "However, our sommelier is currently decanting a 1990 Margaux that has been breathing for over an hour. The 82 Lauer we have was moved from the lower cellar this morning. It hasn't settled yet. If consumed now, the sediment will compromise the finish." Preston laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Are you a sommelier?" "No, sir." "I am your server." "Then don't tell me about sediment. I want the Lauer. Now, go get it." He smirked. "Fetch, girl." The insult hung in the air. "Fetch. Girl. It was demeaning, sexist. designed to strip her of dignity. A flare of heat rose in Maya's chest, but she forced it down, burying it in the cold. Analytical part of her mind. He wants a fight, she realized. He wants me to break so he can feel powerful because he's losing control of the merger. Very well, Maya said. She went to the wine cellar. Henry, the French sommelier, glanced at the ticket and sighed. The Lauer for table 4? It is a waste. He drinks it like soda. Just give it to me, Henry, Maya said. She returned to the table and presented the label. Preston waved his hand dismissively. Open it. She performed the ritual flawlessly, the foil cut clean, the cork eased out without a sound. She poured a small amount for him to taste. Preston swirled the dark red liquid. Took a sip, then his face twisted in exaggerated disgust. He spat the wine into his napkin and hurled it onto the floor. Vinegar! He shouted. Heads turned from every table. David froze near the entrance, his face ghost white. This is swill. Preston roared, his voice booming across the dining room. You brought me a bad bottle. Are you trying to poison me, or are you just too stupid to check the cork? Maya stood over him. The bottle was still in her hand. The wine was perfect. She could smell the layered notes of black currant and cedar from where she stood. He was lying, performing. The wine is sound, Mr. Blackwood, Maya said, raising her voice just enough for the nearby tables to hear calm, steady, unshaken. Are you calling me a liar? Preston demanded that he stood up. He was tall and imposing, looming over her. I said it's vinegar. Take it away. Bring me another bottle. And I'm not paying for this trash. This was the trap. If she took it back, she admitted fault. If she argued, she was rude. Maya didn't retreat. She gently placed the bottle on the table. I cannot take back a bottle that is not flawed simply because you wish to exert dominance over the staff, she said clearly. The silence was absolute. Somewhere 3 tables away, a fork clattered against a plate. Preston's face flushed a violent red. Exert dominance? He thundered. Do you know who I am? I could buy this building and turn it into a parking lot by tomorrow morning. I am Preston Blackwood. I know, Maya replied. She stepped closer, just an inch invading his space. Also know your palate is likely compromised because you've been smoking Cohiba Siglo VA cigars all afternoon. I can smell it on your jacket. The heavy tannins of the Lauer are reacting with the residual tobacco tar on your tongue. The wine isn't bitter, Mr. Blackwood. She held his gaze. You are. The room gasped as one. Preston looked like he'd been struck. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. In 20 years of dining out, no server had ever dissected his vices to explain his own taste buds. You insolent little. He grabbed the wine glass, the one filled with that supposed vinegar, and hurled it. He aimed for the floor, but the splash spread wide. Red wine soaked the hem of Maya's pristine apron and splattered across her shoes. You're fired! Preston screamed, his finger shaking inches from her face. Manager! Get over here. I want this girl out on the street right now. David rushed over, nearly tripping over himself. Mr. Blackwood, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. He turned to Maya urgently. Step back. Go to the kitchen. Then he bowed toward Preston like a servant before a king. Sir, please allow me to comp your meal. We'll open a new bottle, any bottle you want, on the house. Please forgive the girl. She's new. She doesn't know. She insulted me. Preston roared, feeding on the manager's fear. She told me I smell like smoke. I want her fired. I want you to tell her to leave right now in front of me. David turned to Maya, eyes pleading. He mouthed the word go. Maya didn't move. She looked down at the red stain on her apron, then at the shattered glass on the floor. Finally, she looked up at Preston Blackwood, and she smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just watched the prey step into the trap. "I'm not going anywhere." "David," Maya said calmly. She turned fully toward Preston. "And you're not firing me. In fact, Mr. Blackwood, I think you're going to want to sit down and finish your meal very quietly." "And why would I do that?" Preston sneered. Maya reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small white handkerchief. "Dabbing at the wine stain, because," she said, lowering her voice so only Preston and David could hear, "if you make another scene, I'm going to have to explain why you were really on the phone with Tobias Reed about the Sterling merger, and more importantly, why you're so terrified of the audit involving the Phoenix offshore accounts." Preston went rigid. The color drained from his face, leaving him gray, suddenly old. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Sit down." Maya said dot, and to the shock of everyone in the restaurant, from the busboys to the wealthy patrons, watching with bated breath, Preston Blackwood slowly lowered himself back into his chair. "Good," Maya said, lifting the bottle. "I'll get you a fresh glass. The Lauer really does need to breathe." She turned and walked toward the kitchen, leaving a stunned billionaire behind her. But the moment she pushed through the double doors, her hands began to tremble. She had bought herself time, but she knew the truth. The war had only just begun. Preston Blackwood was dangerous, and she had just painted a target on her back. The double doors swung shut behind her, cutting off the low murmur of the dining room. Inside the kitchen, chaos ruled, pans sizzling, chefs shouting, orders flying. But the moment Maya stepped in, it felt as if the noise dimmed. Heads turned. Every eye locked onto her. David looked like he'd seen a ghost. He leaned against a stainless steel prep table, clutching a rag so tightly his knuckles were white. "What did you say to him?" he whispered hoarsely. "I saw him sit down." Preston Blackwood never sits once he stands up to yell. He looked terrified. Maya didn't answer right away. She walked to the sink and rinsed the wine from her hands, watching the red swirl down the drain. "I just reminded him that stress is bad for digestion," she said calmly. Then, without missing a beat, she asked, "David, is the Dover sole ready for table 4? "The Dover sole?" Sarah whispered, stepping closer, her eyes wide. "Maya, are you insane? You can't go back out there. He's going to destroy you. He's probably on the phone right now calling the owner, the mayor maybe, the SWAT team. You need to leave. Go out the back. I'll clock you out." Maya dried her hands with a paper towel. Her face gave nothing away. "I'm not leaving, Sarah," she said evenly. "And neither is he. He has to finish his dinner." She met Sarah's gaze. "It's a power play. If he leaves now, he admits I got to him. He's too arrogant for that." She was right. Out in the dining room, Preston Blackwood sat rigid in his chair, staring at the fresh glass of wine a busboy had nervously placed in front of him. His fingers clenched the stem so hard, his knuckles had turned white. Phoenix accounts. The words echoed in his head as his heart slammed against his ribs. How does she know about Phoenix? That information was buried deep in an offshore shell company in the Cayman Islands, used to funnel bribes to zoning commissioners and launder money from unregistered securities. Only 3 people in the world knew about it: himself, his lawyer Tobias, and his fixer, Garrison Stone. Preston slid his phone from his pocket, keeping it hidden below the edge of the table. His thumbs moved fast. "Need background check ASAP. Name, Maya. Waitress at Velvet Room, Chicago. She knows about Phoenix. Find out who she works for. I want her address, her family, everything." He hit send. Then he lifted the glass and took a large swallow of wine. It tasted like ash, but he forced it down. His eyes never left the kitchen doors. When Maya reappeared, carrying a silver platter, his gaze sharpened. She moved with a terrifying grace. Most servers hurried. Maya glided. She reached the table and set the platter down smoothly. Dover sole Millionaire, she said softly. Deboned tableside, as requested. She lifted a serving spoon and fork. Preston watched her hands. They were perfectly steady. Not a tremor. It enraged him. He wanted her to shake. He wanted to see the fear he saw in everyone else. Who sent you? He growled. Was it Sterling? Did the competition hire you to spy on me? Maya began deboning the fish, her movements precise and surgical. In one fluid motion, she separated the delicate flesh from the spine. I'm here to serve dinner, Mr. Blackwood, she replied calmly. The capers are fresh from Sicily. I suggest eating it while it's still hot. Don't play games with me, Preston hissed, leaning forward. You're not a waitress. You talk like a lawyer, and you stand like a soldier. I'm going to find out who you are, and when I do, I'll bury you so deep the daylight won't find you. Maya paused. She held the silver spoon mid-her. Then she looked at him, and for just a second, the professional mask slipped. Beneath it was something cold, hard steel. Mr. Blackwood, she whispered, her voice low enough to chill his blood. If you dig too deep, you might fall into the hole yourself. She resumed plating the fish. I'd worry less about who I am and more about the Sikh audit scheduled for next Monday. The one you thought you bribed Commissioner Hayes to delay. Preston froze. Hayes was arrested this morning, Maya added softly. Didn't you check the news? His fork slipped from his hand and clattered loudly against the china. He hadn't checked the news. He'd been in meetings all day, hands shaking. He grabbed his phone and opened the business news app. Breaking news. Zoning Commissioner Hayes indicted on corruption charges. The room spun. If Hayes talked, the Phoenix accounts would surface. And this girl, this waitress, had known. Before he did, his phone buzzed. A message from Garrison ran facial recognition and background. She's a ghost. No social media. No credit history under Maya at that address. Only employment record is this restaurant started 3 days ago. Boss, be careful. She's not a civilian. Preston looked up slowly. Maya was already moving on to the next step of service. Calm and composed, as if she hadn't just cracked his world open. And for the first time in decades, Preston Blackwood felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Fear. Preston stared at the message on his phone. She's not a civilian. Fear hardened into something colder, sharper, aggression. He was cornered, and when Preston Blackwood was cornered, he didn't negotiate. He attacked. He couldn't fire her. She knew too much. He couldn't bribe her. She clearly wasn't interested in money. So there was only one option left. He had to discredit her. He had to bury her inside the legal system, somewhere she couldn't talk to anyone. He looked up at Maya, who was calmly spooning more sauce over his fish, her movements unhurried. You think you're smart, Preston said, his voice shifting. It wasn't angry anymore. It was oily, malicious. But you're forgetting one thing about this city. Truth doesn't matter. Perception does. And right now, the perception is that you're a nobody and I'm a pillar of the community. Enjoy your fish, Maya said simply. Stepping back. Oh, I will, Preston replied. Smiling. It was a shark smile. But first, he added, bring me another napkin. This one's dirty. Maya nodded and turned toward the service station. The moment her back was turned, Preston moved. Fast. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a heavy platinum cigarette case, inlaid with diamonds worth $50,000, with sleight of hand perfected through years of boardroom deception. He slid it beneath the rim of the bread basket at the far edge of the table, the side Maya would have to reach across to clear the plates. He was setting the stage. Wasn't just going to ruin her night. He was going to send her to prison. Dinner. Service dragged on like slow torture. Outside, the rain had turned into a torrential downpour. hammering against the tall windows of the velvet room. Inside, the tension at table 4 was thick enough to taste. Preston ate slowly, chewing each bite with deliberate aggression. He watched Maya every time she approached. He waited. The moment came as she stepped in to clear the main course. Maya reached for the bread basket. Suddenly, Preston slammed his hand down on the table. "Where is it?" he shouted. The restaurant, which had just begun to return to normal volume, fell silent again. David, standing near the host stand, closed his eyes in despair. "Sir?" Maya asked, still holding the bread basket. "My cigarette case," Preston bellowed, standing up. He patted his pockets theatrically. "I had it right here on the table. Platinum, diamond inlay." "It's gone." His furious gaze locked onto Maya. "You took it." "I did not take your case." "Mr. Blackwood," Maya said calmly. She didn't flinch, but her eyes scanned the table in a split second. She understood. Immediately. The setup. "Don't lie to me," Preston screamed, jabbing a finger at her. "I saw you. You reached for the bread and palmed it. I saw it with my own eyes. I have no pockets in my apron that could conceal a case that size without a visible bulge." "Sir," Maya replied, lifting her hands to show she held nothing but the basket. "Manager!" Preston shouted. "Call the police now." David rushed over, sweat pouring down his face. "Mr. Blackwood, please. Surely it's just misplaced. Maybe it fell on the floor. I am not senile, and I am not blind." Preston roared. He grabbed David by the lapels of his suit. "This girl is a thief. She's been disrespectful all night, and now she's robbing me. I want the police here immediately. If you don't call them, I'll call the police commissioner myself. We play golf on Sundays." David looked at Maya, his eyes full of apology. "Maya, did you?" "No, David," Maya said. Her voice was steady, but her mind was racing. He was trying to get her arrested. If she was taken into custody, she would be fingerprinted. If she was fingerprinted, her cover would be blown, but not in the way Preston expected. It would trigger alerts in databases Preston Blackwood didn't even know existed. She had to avoid an arrest. "Call them," Preston commanded. 10 minutes later, 2 uniformed officers entered the restaurant, soaked from the rain and visibly annoyed. One was a young rookie. The other was Sergeant Reynolds, a thick-necked man with tired eyes. Maya recognized him immediately, not personally, but by type. He was the kind of man who deferred to expensive suits. "What's the problem here?" Reynolds asked, shaking rain from his cap. "Officer," Preston said, stepping forward and slipping seamlessly into his respectable billionaire persona. "I'm Preston Blackwood. I was dining here quietly when this waitress stole a $50,000 platinum cigarette case from my table." Sergeant Reynolds' eyebrows rose. "50 grand?" Reynolds said. "That's grand larceny." "You sure about that, Mr. Blackwood?" "I watched her do it," Preston replied smoothly. "She's been hostile all evening. Probably thought she could pawn it and quit." Reynolds turned to Maya. He looked her up and down and saw only a waitress in a wine-stained apron. "Ma'am," he said, "empty your pockets." "I didn't take it," Maya said calmly. He planted it. "Check the chair cushions. Check the floor." "I said empty your pockets," Reynolds barked, his hand resting near his belt. Maya exhaled slowly. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her order pad. Then a pen. Then her wine key. "Check the back pocket," Preston said, a smug smile spreading across his face. Maya froze. She hadn't used her back pocket all night. Slowly, she reached behind her. Her fingers brushed against cold metal. Her heart skipped. When did he? She remembered leaning in to pour the water. He had brushed past her, claiming he needed the restroom, then sat back down. He must have slipped it in then. He was faster than she'd given him credit for. Carefully, she pulled out the platinum cigarette case. The room gasped. Sarah clapped a hand over her mouth. David looked like he might faint. Aha! Preston shouted, clapping his hands together. Caught red-handed. I told you, thief and a liar. Reynolds' face hardened. Turn around, ma'am. Hands behind your back. Officer, Maya said urgently, fingerprint the case. You'll find his prints are on top of mine, meaning he handled it last. Or check the restaurant security cameras. We don't have cameras in the dining room, David whispered miserably. Only the entrance and the kitchen. Guest privacy. Turn around, Reynolds repeated. He grabbed Maya's arm and twisted it behind her back. The handcuffs snapped shut with a sharp, final click. Preston leaned close as Reynolds began reading her rights. You should have just fetched the water, Preston whispered, his breath thick with stale wine and malice. Now you're going to jail. And once you're in the system, my lawyers will make sure you stay there for 10 years. You tried to play in the big leagues, little girl. You lost. Maya looked at him. She didn't look defeated. She looked furious. Officer Reynolds, Maya said sharply, cutting through the noise. Before you transport me, I'm requesting you contact your watch commander, specifically Lieutenant Miller at the 4th District. Reynolds paused, still gripping her arm. You know Miller, Maya continued. Tell him you have a Code 7 Alpha detained at the Velvet Room. Reynolds frowned. And tell him, Maya added evenly, that if I'm booked into general population, he'll be explaining to the Department of Justice why a federal operation was compromised over a local larceny dispute. Reynolds stared at her. What are you talking about? You're a waitress. Just make the call, Maya said, locking eyes with him, an intensity that made the sergeant step back. Unless you want to be the one explaining to the feds why their asset is sitting in a holding cell while a corruption target. She nodded toward Preston, walks free. Preston laughed, a nervous edge creeping into it. She's crazy, delusional. Take her away. Reynolds looked at Preston, then back at Maya. He hesitated. The code she'd used, 7 Alpha, wasn't nonsense. It was an old designation, rarely used, reserved for undercover assets in high-risk operations. Put her in the car, Reynolds told the rookie. I need to make a phone call. As Maya was let out into the rain, the diners watched in stunned silence. Preston Blackwood adjusted his cufflinks, a surge of triumph filling his chest. He had won. He had removed the threat, or so he believed. He sat back down and poured the last of the lauer into his glass. He didn't notice the man in the dark trench coat seated at the bar, who had watched the entire scene without touching his drink. The man tapped his earpiece. She's in custody, he murmured. Blackwood took the bait. Initiate Phase 2. Maya hadn't lost. She had allowed herself to be captured. The Trojan horse was already inside the walls. The police cruiser smelled of stale coffee and rain-soaked wool. In the back seat, Maya sat silently, her hands cuffed behind her. She didn't look like a woman arrested for grand larceny. She looked like a woman waiting for a bus beside her. The rookie officer, his name tag reading Officer Doyle, kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, and for reasons he couldn't explain, she made him nervous. He was nervous. There was something about the way she carried herself, chin lifted, shoulders squared, breathing slow and steady. It didn't match the image of a desperate thief. You really steal that guy's case? Officer Doyle finally asked, breaking the silence as they drove through the rain-slick streets of Chicago. No, Maya replied, watching the city lights blur past the window. He gave it to me. Doyle glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You mean, you swiped it? He thinks you framed him. He framed me, Maya corrected calmly. But in his arrogance, he handed the Chicago Police Department the only thing in the world that can destroy him. Doyle frowned. That cigarette case? It's not just a cigarette case, Officer Doyle. Maya closed her eyes. It's a vault. Back at the Velvet Room, Preston Blackwood was writing high. The restaurant had fallen eerily quiet after the police left. Staff avoided table 4 like it was radioactive. David, the manager, hovered near the kitchen, pale and shaking, looking like he might throw up. He had just watched one of his employees get arrested and felt completely powerless. Preston, on the other hand, ordered a cognac. "You there?" he snapped, flicking his fingers at Sarah, who stood trembling near the pause system. "Bring me the bill. And tell your manager that if he wants to keep his job, that girl is banned from this place permanently." Sarah approached slowly and placed the check on the table. She looked at Preston with a mix of fear and pure hatred. "She didn't take it," Sarah whispered, unable to stop herself. "Maya's good. She helped me with my tables. She wouldn't steal." Preston laughed as he signed the receipt with a flourish. He tipped 0. "Everyone has a price, sweetheart," he said coolly. "She just got caught paying hers. Now get out of my face." He stood, buttoning his $5,000 jacket, feeling untouchable. The threat was gone. The girl who knew about the Phoenix accounts was now in the system, labeled a thief. No one would listen to her anymore. Outside, rain bounced off the umbrella held by the valet as Preston climbed into his Bentley. He settled into the leather seat and dialed Garrison Stone, his fixer. "It's done," Preston said, watching the city slide by. "She's in custody. Make sure the DI pushes for maximum charges. I want her buried under legal fees so heavy she can't breathe." "Good," Garrison replied, then hesitated. "But boss, I found something strange in her background check." "What?" I dug deeper into her employment history. The Social Security number she used for the restaurant job, it was issued 3 weeks ago. Brand new. Government fresh. Preston felt a brief flicker of irritation, but pushed it aside. "She's a waitress, Garrison. She was wearing an apron and wiping crumbs off tables. Don't overthink it. Just make sure the charges stick." He hung up. Tomorrow mattered more. The merger with Sterling Global was set for 9 a.m. once those papers were signed. He would control a financial empire spanning 3 continents. Nothing could stop him. At the 4th District Precinct, everything began to shift. Sergeant Reynolds escorted Maya to the booking desk. He was about to tell the booking officer to take her prints when his phone rang. It was the watch commander, Lieutenant Miller. "Reynolds," the commander said sharply, his voice tight with urgency. "Do you have a female suspect brought in from the Velvet Room? Name given as Maya?" "Yes, sir. Grand larceny. Allegedly stole a platinum case from Preston Blackwood." "Stop," Miller ordered. "Do not book her. Do not print her. Do not put her in a cell. Bring her to my office immediately. And Reynolds, if she's in handcuffs, take them off now." Reynolds stared at the phone, then slowly looked at Maya. She stood by the height chart, watching him with that same calm, unsettling expression. "Uncuff her," Reynolds said. The rookie hesitated. "Sarge, do it." The rookie fumbled with the keys. The cuffs clicked open. Maya rubbed her wrists. "Thank you, Sergeant," she said politely. "I assume the commander has verified my credentials." "Who are you?" Reynolds asked quietly. "I'm the person who just used you to secure the evidence," Maya replied. "Where's the cigarette case?" "In an evidence bag, tagged for the DA." "Good," Maya said with a small smile. "Keep it there. Don't let anyone touch it. Not even your chief. That case is the coffin nail." She turned and walked toward the commander's office, leaving behind a room full of stunned officers. The trap had been sprung, and the prey was still, sleeping peacefully in his penthouse, dreaming of billions. The conference room at Blackwood & Associates rose like a fortress of glass and steel on the 40th floor, overlooking the Chicago skyline. The rain had passed, leaving behind a bright, crisp morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows and reflected off the polished, mahogany conference table. Preston Blackwood sat at the head of it. To his right, was Tobias Reed. His lawyer, visibly nervous, sweat darkening his collar. To his left sat the executives from Sterling Global, the massive conglomerate. Preston was moments away from merging with. "The terms are acceptable," said Sterling's CEO. A stern woman named Mrs. Galloway. She tapped the thick stack of contracts in front of her. "However, we've heard rumors, Mr. Blackwood. Rumors of an investigation involving offshore accounts." Preston waved a dismissive hand. "Competitor lies, Mrs. Galloway. Desperate attempts to devalue my stock before the merger. My books are open. My reputation is spotless." "We also heard about an incident at a restaurant last night," she pressed. "Police involvement." "A minor annoyance," Preston said smoothly, letting out a chuckle. "A waitress attempted to steal a family heirloom. The police handled it. It's of no consequence." Tobias leaned toward him and whispered urgently, "Preston, we need to sign. The market opens in 10 minutes. Preston picked up his gold fountain pen. "Let's make history," he said. He lowered the pen toward the signature line. Bam. The heavy double doors didn't open. They were thrown wide. 2 men in dark suits entered first, followed by 4 uniformed federal officers. Walking between them was Maya. She wasn't wearing a stained apron anymore. She was dressed in a sharp navy blue pantsuit. Preston froze. The pen hovered inches above the paper. "I'm afraid I need to interrupt," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. It was the same voice that had once described wine pairings, but now it carried the authority of the United States Department of Justice. Preston shot to his feet, his face flushing purple. "Security. How did she get in here? This woman is a thief. She's out on bail." "I'm not on bail, Preston," Maya said calmly as she walked to the far end of the table. She reached into her jacket and placed a badge on the table. It wasn't a police badge. It was the gold shield of the FBI Financial Crimes Division. "Special Agent Maya Cross," she said. "And I'm not here to serve dinner." The room fell into stunned silence. Mrs. Galloway slowly slid the contract away from Preston. "What is the meaning of this?" Tobias squeaked. "This," Maya said, gesturing to the officers, "is a federal raid. We are seizing all assets, servers, and physical files belonging to Blackwood and Associates under a warrant signed by a federal judge at 3 a.m. this morning." "On what grounds?" Preston shouted. "You have nothing. I mean, she stole my cigarette case. That's all you have. A petty theft charge." Maya smiled. It was the same smile from the restaurant, the one that warned the trap had already closed. "The cigarette case," she repeated. "Let's talk about that." She took a step closer. "For 6 months, we've been tracking the Phoenix accounts. We knew you stored the encryption keys on a standalone device offline, away from hackers. We just didn't know where you kept it." She paused. "We suspected it was always on you. A watch? A phone? But no. It was the platinum case. You carry it everywhere." Preston's knees buckled. He grabbed the back of his chair to stay upright. "We couldn't take it without a warrant," Maya continued. "Or without you voluntarily placing it into police evidence." Her eyes locked onto his. "When you planted that case on me last night," she said, "you demanded the police take it into custody. You handed the Chicago Police Department the encryption key to your entire illegal empire." The room erupted in gasps. Our technicians cracked the micro SD card hidden beneath the diamond inlay 2 hours ago, Maya said. "It contains records of bribery, money laundering, and the illegal short selling of Sterling Global stock." Mrs. Galloway stood abruptly. "You were shorting our stock while negotiating a merger?" "It's a lie!" Preston screamed, sweat pouring down his face. "She's lying. This is a setup." "The metadata doesn't lie, Mr. Blackwood," Maya said calmly. "And neither does the audio." She tapped her lapel. I was wearing a wire last night. Every word you said, calling me a fetch girl, admitting to bribing Commissioner Hayes, promising to bury me in legal fees, it's all recorded. She leaned in slightly. You didn't just confess to financial crimes. You confessed to conspiracy to obstruct justice. Maya nodded to the officers. Preston Blackwood, you are under arrest. The agents moved in. They didn't handle him gently like the local police had. They spun him around and slammed him against the mahogany table, the same table where he believed he was about to crown himself king of Chicago. Don't touch me. The words died in his throat as the cuffs snapped shut. Preston shrieked, Do you know who I am? Tobias, do something. Tobias Reed was already backing away, his hands raised. I'm cooperating, Agent Cross. I'll tell you everything. I was just following orders. Traitor! Preston screamed as the handcuffs planed steel, not gold, snapped shut around his wrists. Maya stepped closer as the agents hauled him upright. He looked small now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the raw terror of a man who finally understood his life was over. You were right about one thing, Mr. Blackwood, Maya said quietly, so only he could hear. I did bring you the wrong water. You asked for aqua panna, but where you're going, the water comes from a tap next to a toilet. I hope your palate adjusts. They dragged him out. The Sterling executives watched with open disgust. Maya picked up her badge and turned to Mrs. Galloway. I apologize for the disruption. Ma'am. But I believe your merger would have been a catastrophic mistake. You saved us billions, Mrs. Galloway said, still stunned. Thank you, Agent. Maya nodded and walked away. Her shift was finally over. The fall of Preston Blackwood was not a quiet slide into obscurity. It was a financial earthquake that shook the foundations of Chicago's business district. The trial began 3 months later and became the most watched legal spectacle of the decade. The federal prosecutor, Eleanor Vansa, razor-sharp attorney, who had chased Blackwood for years, didn't merely present a case. She dismantled a man. The centerpiece of the trial wasn't the terabytes of data pulled from the micro SD card, hidden inside the platinum cigarette case. That evidence alone could have sealed his fate. The real nail in the coffin was the audio. On the final day of testimony, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, former employees, and victims of Blackwood's hostile takeovers sat shoulder to shoulder. Maya sat in the front row, dressed in formal FBI attire, her face unreadable. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Vance said, pacing slowly. The defense wants you to believe Mr. Blackwood is a misunderstood genius, a job creator. They claim the bribery was a clerical error. She stopped. But character is not revealed in boardrooms. Character is revealed in the dark. She pressed play. Preston's voice filled the courtroom, clear, cold, undeniable. You're not a waitress. You talk like a lawyer. I will bury you so deep the daylight won't find you. The room held its breath. Then came the final blow. In this city, truth doesn't matter. Perception matters. And right now, the perception is that you are a nobody. Preston sat frozen at the defense table, eyes squeezed shut. He could feel the jury's gaze burning into him. They weren't elites. They were teachers, mechanics, nurses, people he would have treated like dirt if they'd served him dinner. The verdict took less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: racketeering, securities fraud, bribery of a public official, conspiracy to obstruct justice. Sentencing hearing was merciless. Judge Marcus Sterling, ironically related to the company Preston had tried to destroy, looked down from the bench. Mr. Blackwood, the judge said gravely, you lived your life believing wealth exempted you from morality. You treated the law as a suggestion and people as disposable tools. He paused. You tried to bury a waitress to save yourself. Instead, you dug your own grave. The gavel came down like thunder. I sentence you to 25 years in a federal correctional institution. Additionally, under asset forfeiture laws, all properties and holdings obtained through illegal activity are hereby seized by the United States government. The aftermath was swift. Blackwood Tower lost its name, his penthouse was stripped bare, and in a twist the newspapers couldn't resist. His prized wine cellar was auctioned to repay the pension funds he had stolen from. 1982 Chateau Lauer, the very wine he had once smashed on the floor, was sold to a charity that fed the homeless. 6 months later, reality settled in. Preston Blackwood was no longer a billionaire. He was inmate number 89,421 at Terre Haute Federal Correctional Institution in Indiana. It was medium security, but far from the cushy white-collar facilities he had assumed awaited him because of his threats against a federal agent. He was placed in general population. The transition was brutal. Custom Italian suits were replaced by a scratchy, ill-fitting khaki jumpsuit. Handmade leather loafers became canvas. Slip-ons. But the worst part, the part that gnawed at him every single day, wasn't the food or the noise or the filth. It was the absence of control. It was noon lunch hour. The prison cafeteria was a vast, echoing hall that reeked of industrial bleach, boiled cabbage, and unwashed bodies. The noise was overwhelming. There was no soft music here, only the crash of plastic trays and the constant, aggressive shouting of hundreds of men. Preston stood in line, shuffling forward. He had lost 30 pounds. His skin, once kept smooth by expensive facials and good scotch, was now gray and papery. He kept his head down. He'd learned quickly that eye contact was a challenge, and in here, he couldn't afford challenges. When he reached the serving window, he hesitated. Behind the plexiglass stood Tiny, a massive inmate assigned to kitchen duty. A spiderweb tattoo stretched across his thick neck. Tiny controlled the portions. And in prison, food was currency. Preston held out his plastic tray, his hands trembling. "Just the stew, please," he muttered. Tiny looked down and smirked. He recognized him. Everyone did. The story of the billionaire who'd been taken down by a waitress was legendary in the yard. "Speak up," Tiny growled, holding the ladle of brown, gelatinous sludge suspended in midair. "The stew," Preston said, his voice cracking. "Please." Tiny's grin widened. He slammed the ladle into the tray. The stew splashed violently, splattering Preston's chest and dripping onto his hand. "Hey!" Preston flinched, a flicker of his old arrogance bursting out before he could stop it. "Watch what you're doing. You got slop on me." The noise around them died instantly. Inmates at nearby tables stopped eating. Tiny leaned forward, pressing his face close to the glass. His eyes were flat and lifeless. "What was that, number 89,421? He said slowly. "You got a complaint about the service?" Preston opened his mouth. The words rose automatically. "Do you know who I am?" "I am Preston Blackwood. I could buy your family." Then the memory hit him. The velvet room, the spilled wine. Maya standing calm and dignified while he raged like a child. The realization landed hard. The tables hadn't just turned. They'd flipped upside down. He was the one begging now. He was the one with the stain. Preston swallowed. Pride burned all the way down, tasting like ash. "No," he whispered, wiping the hot gravy off his hand with his sleeve. "No complaint." "Thank you." "That's what I thought." Tiny laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Move along, fetch boy." Fetch boy. The echo of his own insult came back to haunt him. Preston carried his tray to the farthest table in the corner and sat facing the wall. Alone, he stared down at the food. A lukewarm beef substitute. Overcooked carrots. It smelled like wet cardboard. He lifted his plastic spoon and took a bite. It was revolting. He ate it anyway, every bite, because he was starving, and for the first time in 60 years. Preston Blackwood finally understood the true value of what was on his plate, 300 miles away. The atmosphere at the Velvet Room couldn't have been more different. The rain had given way to a brilliant golden afternoon. Sunlight poured through spotless windows. The restaurant was packed since the trial. It had become something of a local landmark. Guests specifically requested table 4, hoping a little of that good karma might rub off on them. David stood at the host stand, looking healthier and happier than he had in years. Laughing with Sarah when the front door opened. Maya walked in. She wasn't wearing her FBI jacket or a suit. She had on jeans, a soft leather jacket, and boots. Her hair was down. She looked relaxed. Table for 1? David joked, his face lighting up. Maya, Sarah gasped, dropped the tray she was holding empty, thankfully, and rushed over to hug her. We saw the sentencing on the news, Sarah said breathlessly. 25 years. You actually did it. He did it to himself, Maya said gently, returning the hug. I just opened the door. The kitchen staff peeked out, waving. To them, she was a hero, the one person who'd stood up to a tyrant for the service industry. I can't stay long, Maya said, pulling a thick, cream-colored envelope from her jacket. But I had to drop this off personally. She handed it to David. He frowned, confused. What is this? Open it. David broke the seal, pulled out a cashier's check and froze. He blinked once. Then again. $50,000? He stammered. Maya, what is this? The whistleblower reward, Maya said softly. The government seized over $200 million from the Phoenix accounts. Standard procedure allocates a percentage to the source of the intelligence. But you were the source, Sarah said. You're the one who, Maya shook her head. I can't accept reward money, Maya said. But technically, the tip originated from the staff at the Velvet Room, alerting authorities to the theft of the cigarette case. She winked. I filed the paperwork under your names. It's to be split among everyone who worked that night. Sarah covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Maya. My mortgage. I was 2 months behind. This saves my house, she whispered. The kitchen crew too, David added, his voice thick with emotion. The dishwasher. Hoses's daughter needed braces. This covers it 10 times over. Maya smiled softly. He tried to destroy you with his money, she said firmly. It's only right that his money is used to build you back up. She stepped back toward the door, the afternoon light framing her silhouette. Where are you going now? David asked. Back to the bureau. Not yet, Maya said, checking her watch. I have a flight to catch. Washington, D.C., another billionaire? Sarah asked. A senator, Maya corrected, her smile dry. He likes to throw coffee at his interns. I think he's about to hire a new assistant who makes a very specific cup of coffee. David laughed. Give him hell, Maya. I'll give him justice, she promised. Maya walked out onto the bustling Chicago street. She hailed a yellow cab and slid into the back seat with the calm, practiced ease of someone who had lived a dozen lives. As the car pulled away, merging into the traffic, she didn't look back. There would always be more bullies in the world, more tyrants who thought themselves untouchable. But as long as they had secrets, and as long as they underestimated the people who served them, Maya would be there waiting, watching, ready to serve. And that is how the rudest billionaire in Chicago served himself a 25-year sentence. On a silver platter, Preston Blackwood thought his money made him untouchable. He forgot the golden rule: treat everyone with respect, because you never know who's really pouring your water. Maya proved that dignity isn't about what you wear or how much you make. It's about character. And in the end, character always wins. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that karma is always watching. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. What did you think of Maya's trap? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.